Oh my goodness. Hello. We're gonna do our pop culture stream kind of naked. I don't really have a plan, so let's just go through what we have been watching and or reading. Um, so this is about TV shows, comic books, video games, movies, etc. I have not watched Deadpool and Wolverine. I never got around to going to see it. I didn't even bother to bootleg it. Maybe I'll do a regular review when I actually do see it, but I haven't seen it. So this is an opportunity for you guys to tell me things that you have seen and you have been watching. Um, and I really kind of have fell off with a little of everything. I haven't been watching much anime. I haven't really been reading too many comics. Um, even though I did have my monthly pickup of comics, which it was mostly like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Conan the Barbarian and the two Spawn books that I was reading that now has turned into one Spawn book because I have gotten absolutely sick of King Spawn going nowhere. So I canceled it. I canceled it mostly in a fit of rage. Just because I canceled it doesn't mean it won't be on the shelf, you know. Just means I don't want to get it right directly in my inbox. You feel me? So but what do you guys oh, Cobra Kai. I've actually never watched Cobra Kai. Um I don't get it. I don't get what it's about. Like I don't get why it's a thing. Like as far as I'm concerned, um if you watched the Karate Kid, isn't that what the movie? See, I'm not going to talk about what streaming service I use for anime because I don't want to encourage negativity. I don't want to encourage pirating. I certainly do not pay for anime. So let's put it like that. And I don't want to put it out there and then it turns around and it gets booted. It gets yeeted. Cause I think my bootleg movie site got yeeted. So that's why I haven't been able to watch Wolverine and Deadpool. And I refuse to go to a theater. The theaters are way too far from me for me to go watch a movie I only kind of want to see. Um, but I see now that they have a Watchmen cartoon. Uh, I don't know if I should watch it. I haven't been watching Invincible. I didn't even start X-Men '97, even though I did see that the guy who wrote the show he got outed as being a real weirdo. But then again, something tells me they already knew that. They already knew he was a weirdo, and they were okay with him being a weirdo as long as he played the role that they wanted him to play. Then he started getting a little ahead of himself, so he decided to just go ahead and nuke him from orbit, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But did I see Bruce Timm's dumb explanation of the female penguin was due to lack of female villains? I've been watching people talk about it. I didn't look at the interview myself. Here's the thing about the Cape Crusader. I listened to Aaron Sparrow rant about it on the Thinking Critical channel. I just listened to it today, as a matter of fact. Um, a lot of people are very angry at Bruce Timm, and rightfully so. What he said was dumb. It was a really dumb comment, saying that there aren't enough good villains, or he just said basically Batman doesn't have good enough villains, or something stupid like that. It was real prime stupid material that really said that he doesn't know that much about the Batman mythos and the Batman franchise, which is crazy considering how integral he is in the Batman franchise with being involved with the animated series. Now, the story is now that basically, thanks to Aaron Sparrow, is that essentially it was Paul Dini the entire time. That was the brains behind that operation. And that might well be true. But here's the thing, I didn't hate the Cape Crusader as a show. You know, the female penguin was in episode 1. So that means if people were complaining about the female penguin, they never got past episode 1. To me, was it stupid? Yes, it was really dumb. I don't think it really added anything to the character of the penguin. It didn't reveal anything about the penguin. Um, it was just a weird thing that they did. It was just a really weird thing that they decided to do. I'm okay for having variations of villains because they do that a lot. They have these variations of these characters, and one of these variations is it's a female. It wasn't really a big deal. Like I was more stupefied by the cabaret element of it, where she's singing and dancing. I just didn't understand that part. Um, like I didn't get how that's supposed to add anything to the penguin. But the general idea of Cape Crusader is that characters are always, or the bad guys are almost always pretending to be something else. You know, good, upstanding citizens, and then it's put together like a detective story. I liked it. It's put together like a detective tale. You know who the villains are because you're seeing it, but it's up to Batman to figure it out. And the Penguin is basically a cabaret singer who moonlights as a mobster. And of course, Harley Quinn is a psychiatrist who is operating on her patients and turning them into zombies, basically to attack people. Catwoman is a rich heiress who's run out of money, and now she's going to turn her to a life of crime to maintain her lifestyle. And of course, you know, Two Face is, you know, former politician, a lawyer, um, and he becomes, you know, Two Face, a mob boss. So that's, you know, and Clayface was another one, a former actor that has, you know, become a homicidal mud monster. So it kind of fits the story that everybody has two sides, you know. But it was a senseless turn because what he says doesn't make any sense. To say that there aren't any good female villains or there's no good Batman villains is obviously false, and it's one of those things that would not have worked on anybody who is interviewing him who knows anything about Batman or knows anything about the series or about the comics or anything like that. It never would have worked. But because he was likely talking to somebody who didn't know anything, or it was just plain access media, and they don't ask any legitimate questions anyway. These things have gone way too far. But we're 10 years into race swaps, gender swaps. It can't be worth having a meltdown over at this point. I think at this point, most people made the wise decision that if it bothered them that much, they didn't watch it. And a lot of, from my understanding, a lot of people didn't watch it. But I watched Cape Crusader from beginning to end. I liked it, like I said, and I thought it was better than my adventures with Superman. I can't compare it to X Men because I haven't watched it. I haven't watched X Men, but I don't really have a. I really don't have anything to say about it other than yeah, it was dumb, but when, there's a lot of dumb things that's going on right now, and it's just one of those stupid things that they decided to do in order to filter people out. So a lot of people jumped off board as soon as they saw a female penguin. They jumped off board. I think that's the right thing to do if that bothers you that much. But ultimately, uh, I like the shit. I like the series. I didn't mind. AJ3 says, "What about Red Claw, who was in the original Batman animated series? Why Bruce Timm never bring her back? She would be perfect for this era." Here's the thing. We could talk about Lady Shiva, Talia al Ghul, uh, Poison Ivy. There's plenty of female villains in Batman. There's just so many. The thing is, for them, they get off on changing characters. They get off on changing characters. So that's what they do. The idea that they changed a male to a female because there weren't enough female villains is dumb and it's wrong. It's obviously false. They did it because they knew it would get attention. And putting out another Batman cartoon doesn't really get that much traction. It doesn't get people talking. It doesn't get people interested. But if you give them something to talk about, i.e., hey, we've done something crazy, come see what other crazy things we've done, then people are going to talk about it. It's going to give them a free advertising. Again, ultimately, the female pink was in the first episode, and that was pretty much it. I think the first 5 episodes of the show were the best. I think it got weaker as the show went on. But ultimately, it didn't distract me from much of anything. It seemed like they were trying to make some of these characters composite characters anyway. Low Key '07 says one of the Penguin's sons could have become the Oswald Cobblepot that we know, like a new origin for it. Yeah, I mean that would have been interesting, right? To name the character Oswalda, which doesn't even make sense. There's nobody ever named Oswalda. Like if you was going to tell the story and say it was Penguin's mom, and then you let the pleb filter get people to get pissed off and leave, and then you reveal that the Penguin learned the art of crime from his criminal mama, that would have been a nice twist. Because she had sons in the show, but again, it was just, man, it wasn't offensive enough for me to get upset about. I wasn't that upset. So I typically I looked at it and was like, man, that's dumb, and then I just kind of moved on. Low Key '07 says Cape Crusader was the most meh Batman thing I've seen in a while. I don't know if it was the most meh, but it was pretty meh. It wasn't nothing to lose any sleep over. I didn't feel the need to rant and rave on it. For me, I think a part of the problem that most people have not discussed and do not discuss is that a lot of people see the Penguin as being anti-Semitic because he's bulbous, he's got a large nose, and he's obsessed with money. So a lot of people look at him and be like, "Oh, this is a Jewish representation thing," and maybe that's what they turned the Penguin female for, to try to get away from the Jewish stereotype. But if he'd have said that, it would have just brought attention to it. So maybe he said something stupid to get away from, well, we don't want to stereotype, Jews, or there's a belief that the character is a stereotype of Jewish people. But who cares ultimately? Like ultimately, who gives a shit? AJ3 says, notice Marvel and DC stopped creating new characters in the past 10 years. Why is that? I think a lot of it is because the creators now realize that they're not going to get paid for any of these characters. Like earlier, most people kind of figured I might get some decent residuals if I create a cool character. I might be able to get a job and keep the job for a long time. Now, a lot of people just create the characters that they're told to create by the editors. A lot of these ideas, from my understanding, a lot of the editors are basically writing these books, and they just have somebody else type it up. The editors aren't filtering out bad ideas; they're actually funneling in bad ideas. So, and then you can always tell because the difference between what people are doing at Marvel and DC versus what they're doing on their own is so vastly different. You know, um, It's brutal. It's truly brutal. But I think it has a lot to do with people not getting paid for the characters, and therefore they feel like they shouldn't go about creating anything. There's no point. WG Phil says the Sun idea wouldn't work considering Penguin was always older. Yeah, but that's something that you can fudge. You can always fudge that the Penguin is now a younger man. You know, you could always. I mean that won't lose. You won't lose any sleep over that. Nobody's gonna care about that. Um, Especially if you tell the story that he's basically just inheriting his mom's criminal enterprise and he's like a nepo baby or something like that. Then it's just the beginning of his criminal career. He doesn't know that much about anything, and he'll figure it out as he goes along. That's one of those things that doesn't really bother me too much. If you was going to have a younger Penguin, sure, you would think that most of Batman's villains would be around his age. But if you just wanted to say, hey, we're going to have one of these characters be younger because that's a story that we want to tell there, then go for it. But I don't think the female angle added anything or really said anything about Gotham or the world or anything about it. It was just kind of like, oh, here's a female character and she's called the Penguin. And it's played straight. It's not like she's the descendant of the Penguin or the mother of the Penguin or anything like that. She's just a female character called the Penguin. And I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. Just name the Penguin Max. Catwoman and Harley Quinn were both in the show. Uh, Catwoman was a villain. Well, she was kind of like an anti-hero in one episode. Well, technically, she was a villain, and Harley Quinn was a villain in one of the episodes too. So they used two of them. They didn't use the Joker, which is why I actually watched it. I was okay with watching it because I kind of have burnout on the Joker. So I thought it was cool that they managed to do an entire 10-episode series, and they didn't even tease the Joker until the end. Spoilers for those of you who might want to watch it, but the Joker is teased at the very, very last episode. So you went through the entirety of the show, and there was not a lot. There was no Joker wank, so that was great. You got to see Batman work with other characters and work with other villains. But the best thing about it for me is that he came across like a real detective trying to solve a crime, which is the strength of Batman. That's the Batman I want to see. You know, prep guy Batman and all that kind of stuff. I want to see Batman, stumble upon a crime and it's a creepy, weird villain that he's trying to figure out. If you wanted to make another Batman villain female, you could have made Talon female from the Court of Owls, because who the fuck cares who Talon is? Like, there's a lot of characters that you could have switched female if you wanted to, if that's just what you wanted to do. But my only angle is I'm pretty sure the Penguin was picked, likely due to the anti-Semitism. So Bruce Timm, not smart, and that's typical of people who are doing woke shit. They just can't come to explain why they're doing what they're doing. Another thing that got people all tight-assed was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 by Jason Aaron and Joel Jones. This featured Raphael in prison as the Turtles are separated, but we don't know why. Now, some people were tight-assed about this because they're like, I don't like the idea of the Turtles being separate. I do. I mean, the series is all about the Turtles. So they separated them because I guess they're trying to pick up the story of where Sophie Campbell left off. So this story features Raphael in jail, and we don't know why he's in jail, and we're not told why he's in jail, but it's pretty clear that he can get out of jail whenever he wants. He's in jail for a reason. He's kind of basically undercover in jail. But again, a lot of people saw the 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 free pages or something like that, and then flipped out. So there's nothing you can say. A 27 something still taking orders from mommy. Yeah, I mean that's basically what they were anyway. The young boys that were the Penguin sons in the show were basically mama's boys anyway. So if you wanted to make something interesting, you could have done that. I think it also could have, if you had done that, she was the Penguin's mom. You could have played on that a little bit because they did that in Batman Returns, right? Where part of it was Danny DeVito's Penguin didn't know who his parents were. He was, abandoned and all this kind of stuff. He had these intricate, uh, weird relationship with his parents, and it could be a situation here too, where there has been history there with the Penguin and his parentage that you could play with. WG feels that I thought anti-Semitism is now okay due to the Palestine stuff. No, not from regular white guys, not from regular white people. And then we don't know whether there's Jews hanging around in that animation department or not. We don't know. I have no idea. Hell, some people might be involved, might be Jews. Um, I think there's going to be a new TMNT cartoon coming out soon. I don't know how soon, but it's supposed to be one coming out. It's going to be based off the Mutant Mayhem uh, movie. I don't know. I'm really struggling to think about whether I'm going to watch it or not. um, so I don't know. I don't feel like I have to watch everything or follow everything. Sometimes I take a couple of things off, especially if I feel like everybody else is on it. I tell you this, I still do really like Spy Family. I do. Spy Family is one of those manga that started out super hot that has cooled down, but I still enjoy it. It doesn't, to me, the manga doesn't come out frequently enough in the United States. I think pretty much every other month. But I still enjoy Spy Family, even though it feels a little constipated. And that's a big issue when it comes to things that are popular, is that it tends to stall at a certain point because you want to drag it out as long as possible. So there's a lot of bonus content. There's a lot of um, stories that are fleshed out a little bit more than they probably need to be. A little extra panel here and there to pad the story out. So I think that for like maybe the last 2 or 3 volumes, Spy Family has been a little padded, but I still like it. I still enjoy it. I think the same thing happened to My Hero Academia, where it got so popular it started padding itself a little bit. That thing is over. I'm going to talk about it when I don't know what happened at the end, so no spoilers for those of you who have been reading My Hero Academia. But I'm going to eventually get the final volume when it comes out in English. And we'll talk about the end of that series there. Um, I think I'm going to purchase the Yu Yu Hakusho manga, um, or maybe even the Full Metal Alchemist manga. Now, in terms of which one am I a bigger fan of, I'm probably a bigger fan of Yu Yu Hakusho, even though I love Full Metal Alchemist and I want to read the manga. So I really don't have any more space to put like a huge manga volume in here. But I'm gonna start getting rid of some of these comics. I'm gonna start every Monday doing a dump of comics at work for some of the patients, especially as the stray floppies that I have laying around. And graphic novels that I purchased on like, oh hey, this looks cool, and it ends up being dumb. I just throw it in there and throw it in the box. We have activity therapists. They like to distribute books and stuff like that. And I'll just donate some. I also take some to like these leave a book, take a book. Sometimes I'll take a bunch of comics and stuff up there and just leave them because people do take their kids up there to pick up comic books and stories and things like that. So I'll just dump them there. But I told people I would read Berserk. I haven't done it yet. I have really. My whole thing with Berserk is that the creator is dead and the series is not over. So I really just have no enthusiasm about reading it now that the creator is dead and the series is over. But I said I was going to at least get the first volume, but I think I'm gonna end up getting the first two or three, the big hardbacks. I think I'm gonna end up getting those, but I don't know if those are best for reading. Those seem like what people get if they have already read it in like the small paperback form, but they just want to have a larger, more collected edition. So maybe somebody who is more of a manga fan can let me know whether getting those big bricks is the best purchase. But it seems like it because it seems like there's like 12 issues per uh, gigantic Bible of Berserk. It seems like there's like 12 or whatever issues in there, 12 volumes. What do I think about the Mr. Beast situation? He had a very avoidable downfall. Um, the internet is something else, isn't it? He was friends with that uh, Chris Tyson person before they became famous. Felt the need to stick with his friend the entire time, not knowing what his friend was doing, not knowing that his friend was the kind of person who would do those kinds of things. But I think that you didn't. I think they had been friends for a long time, like a really long time. And how odd is it that not only was your friend engaged, married, had a child, then decided they were trans, and then decided to hire people that they were having sex with and bring them to the video shoots, and then uh, continue these relationships even though this person works for the company and have multiple sexual partners floating around, and then get outed as a potential pedophile. Like, how well did you really know this person at that point? And it just it just spiraled out of control from there. In terms of what I think about Mr. Beast, I really don't have any opinion on it because I have never watched a Mr. Beast video in my life. Everything I know about these characters, I know against my will. I don't have an opinion. But I do know the story because, I watch other videos and I'm like, man, the internet is crashing out because Mr. Beast I think, is Mr. Beast the number one YouTube channel in the history of planet Earth, even bigger than T-Series and PewDiePie. And there's nothing that the United States loves more than watching you get built up than tearing you down. And that's one thing that I've learned a lot. The U.S. will give you whatever, your heart's desire. But there's somebody, somewhere in the 100, 200 million people in the United States that wants to see you fall. And then other people will very quickly jump on and drag you down with them. But I don't know that much about Mr. Beast. I don't know anything about his content. All I know is people was talking like Mr. Beast was a saint, and then all of a sudden this stuff happened. Now everything he did is a scam. He was always a scam artist. It's like, wow, I don't. So I really don't have that much of an opinion on Mr. Beast. Prince Ali says, I'm writing a hypothetical situation of the afterlife, excluding the probability of heaven or hell. It's meant to question the afterlife and how can we adjust. Flesh that out. What's that about? Harley is Asian now, so is the character Punchline. Why didn't they just use her and flesh out a new character? They also avoided Harley's traditional outfit. She was wearing black and gold, and she was kind of pudgy and Asian. And I was just kind of like, okay, I just roll with the punches, man. Of course, I was like, why didn't they just create a new character for Harley? But they wanted to make Harley, look, I think, more sinister and more serious. I have no idea why she was Asian. And yeah, I had completely forgotten about Punchline, but yeah, Punchline is Asian. So, did I see the Suicide Squad animated show? No, no, no. That didn't look like it was anything for me. I may look at it though. I haven't heard anything good about it. I saw Casually Comics talk about it once or twice, but it's not something that she follows a lot, and she usually can get me interested in something because she has a very analytical take on it, and she also knows the history of the characters and stuff like that. And I figure if she's got decent taste, not the best, she's got decent taste. So I take if she had talked well about the Suicide Squad anime, I might have watched it. I think she did like 2 videos on it, and it was just kind of like that was it. So it wasn't like a continued thing. Like she was really into the X-Men, and I was like, that made me want to watch it. But I was like, I resisted because I knew something was weird about that X-Men show, and I don't trust Disney. AJ3 says, who won the culture war, or is it still going on, and what the aftermath? Well, the culture war is perpetual. I think that the SJWs they're not in retreat, but the hardest of the hardcores have been defeated. What now we have is subtle wokeness. There's been a lot of peeling back on the hardcore propaganda. Like the worst of it was 6 or 7 years ago in like 2015, 2016. That's when it was awful, and there was absolutely no escaping it. It was in every movie, every TV show, it was everywhere. Now they have been beaten back, and they realize that they could put an acceptable level of wokeness into a series, and people they'll say, much like what's going on with the Batman Cape Crusader, where everybody's kind of like, if you just tripping over a female penguin, that's the only thing on the show that you could really flip out about. The fact that Harley is Asian, it's like, so what? You know, she's supposed to look more like a psychiatrist, I guess. But those small things tucked into the show are changes that they would not have done, or maybe things that they would have done in the 80s or 90s. But the way I look at it when it comes to certain changes is that there had been like a black Catwoman decades ago. They have done Catwoman as a kind of Asian-ish kind of character. She's been blonde, she's been brunette, she's been rich, she's been poor, she's been a prostitute, she's been all kinds of things. So when you look at all of these characters, they take on a different twist every time you see them. This is just one of the twists that they decided to make. But their reasoning for it is dumb. If they just wanted to say, hey, look, we want to do something different with the Penguin. We think he's kind of boring. Or we wanted it to be different from the Penguin in the Batman movie. We wanted it to be different. We wanted to tell a different story with the Penguin and keep the name. Most people would have just been like, what you did was dumb, but they wouldn't have thought too much about it. But the reason that was given was one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. And it makes no sense. Shoo says, "Feel you, Mr. Beast is getting shoved in my face. I don't know this guy." That's the thing about the algorithm, right? The algorithm teaches you about people you have no interest in. They teach you about stories you have no interest in. And sometimes it works out because it awakens you to things that still might be cool. Like I had no interest in watching breaking at the Olympics. I was like, that sounds stupid. Why would I want to watch that? But then the Australian woman went out there and embarrassed herself. And I was like, I know there's got to be some good breakdancing on this goddamn thing. And it turns out that it was, so the algorithm can work with you or can work against you. AJ3 says, on Tubi, I saw this documentary about black serial killers, fact or fiction. That's interesting. That's interesting. Did they talk about the guy in Atlanta that was killing kids and what was he doing with them? Like putting them in suitcases and stuff? If Cape Crusader took place in the 40s, they should have added elements of Harley being called a Jap. I think adding the race element would have been interesting, but I think they just wanted the aesthetic of the 1940s because they had like homosexuals and stuff in it, which being an openly homosexual in the 1940s is kind of like good luck with that. Like there were gay people in the 1940s, of course, but like being like this open homosexual in public, yeah, good luck with that. Prince Ali says the afterlife would escalate ideas, so bad could turn into evil, good could turn into virtue, disruption could turn into pure chaos, and this organization could turn into pure order. So it's not heaven or hell. It's just kind of like a situation where if you were if you were a bad person, you go to an evil place. I don't know. That still sounds like hell to me. He says it took them 7 or 8 years to finally realize. Though, here's my thing, and I think Perch explained this very well. They were a lot of it was the funding source for the wokeness. They were getting huge cash infusions from dark money. Let's say some people would say ESG funds. Some people would say Vanguard, BlackRock. Were investing in these organizations, and then that money started to dry up. And so when the company doesn't need the money of the consumer, they just put out whatever they want. And that's when they can hire people who says like fuck you all over the internet. But now that they need your money, they decided, oh, we're going to be kinder, gentler. We're going to get rid of all of those old jerks who were saying fuck you all over the internet. We're going to get rid of them. And we're going to replace them with people that still aren't the best people to have the job, but they're more manageable. They know how to subtly put storylines in the woke shit into the cartoons and movies and stuff, and it won't offend you because conservatives are used to it. They should be. Conservatives and libertarians should be used to having liberal ideas pushed into their media because most of us have grown up with that, and you don't pay attention to it until you get older and you have your own little political awakening, and then you look back and say, "Oh my God, all this was liberal garbage, liberal propaganda." But that's just kind of how it is. And there's people who can artfully put it in there, and then there's people who could, dump the whole vat of acid and arsenic in there. And there's no more money in offending you. The funding source of wokeness is starting to dry up a little bit. So what you see is they're starting to run away. Just like we talked about GARM, and Ben Shapiro was talking about recently. Well, GARM is folded. They were getting sued by Elon Musk. I think some other people was trying to sue them. Daily Wire was suing them. And instead of fighting it back, which they probably could have done, they decided to just fold. So they just closed up shop and see ya. We'll go do something. They're gonna, of course, reform somewhere else under some different kind of organization and start right back doing what they were doing. But generally, they're not combative anymore. So when you start seeing things like what was the video game company, the consultants or whatever. Eventually, the money is going to dry up. Those companies are going to go away, and then new companies will be formed, which might feature some of the same people, but it's going to be more subtle. So if you live the life of bad, that's what you become, but 10 times that. If you live a life of good, you'll become 10 times that. But what can we do with that virtue and evil when dead? That's a good question. See, when I did something, I wrote a story. It's called Ursula's Legacy, and I wanted to do like a Dante's Inferno kind of thing, right? So I did it where it's voodoo based, but I try to add in different elements of different religions and different stories that I've read. And I read and I love Dante's Inferno. So I decided to do like a Dante's Inferno kind of thing with her trip into the underworld. It wasn't hell in a traditional sense, but it starts out like, and I think I also had the idea from a James Robinson Scarlet Witch comic where she was walking the witch's road, and that's kind of was going through my mind and I was writing it. And at one part, I had soldiers who died in war just continue the war even after they're dead. So they're continuously shooting at their own, like World War II. The Nazis and the Americans are still fighting in the afterlife. It's not hell. It's not heaven. It's just that they're continuing to do what they were already doing. Gangbangers were continuing to gangbang in the afterlife, you know, and that was one of the levels that I had created. So I also, have toyed with the idea of what 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 is afterlife like, and I created a neighborhood where this was like one of the first levels of the underworld, where if you died peacefully, you would just be in your like a mock version of your home with a mock version of your yard, but you would be alone, especially like a situation where the husband died but the wife did. So the husband would be sitting on his porch, rocking in his rocking chair by himself, sad because he's alone, you know. But if he had a son that died, his son would be with him. If he had a daughter that died or even a pet, he would have that pet. But most of the time, it would just be the person by themselves. And I was very sad writing that. So, and this thing is not as long as you would think. Like you could probably take that and turn it into a whole book. I turned it into a couple of chapters. So I understand where you're going, in terms of what do you do with evil people after dead or good people after they die. And I've toyed with that idea myself. They could have turned it into the penguin's daughter. Well, you could have had that too. Could have had that too. It could have been interesting. The Black Catwoman tends to be a separate character to Selena Kyle. Yeah, but most people don't know that. It typically doesn't even matter to them. All they know is Catwoman is black. Halle Berry was Catwoman. How can racist? Eartha Kitt was Catwoman. Anyway, I don't mind changing characters if the change fits the story and if it's well done. Because I know it's all art, you know. Um, there are certain things that I will not tolerate though, and that is when things are done very poorly. I don't like poorly done stuff. I don't like that. But if it's good and it's just different, I think I can accept good but different. I'm not saying that Cape Crusader is good but different, because some of the stuff is actively not as good as it could have been. But I'm just saying it was different and it didn't really harm anything. AJ3 says, you heard this YouTube video called I Spend Weeks with Black Republicans. I saw the thumbnail. I didn't click the video because I have no interest in that kind of stuff. But I did see the thumbnail. WG Phil says, even if Kathleen Kennedy retires or Sweet Baby closes down, the system will still exist. Yes, they will just change and form and function to do something slightly different than what they're already doing. And the most people think that the agenda is dying. They think the agenda is going away. I think that those people are being optimistic. This stuff's forever. All right. It's forever. You're not going to get rid of this stuff. So if you've already resigned yourself to not watching any more cartoons or not watching any more movies, that's probably your best option. Because I don't think you're going to be able to get away from this stuff anytime soon. It's not ever going to be completely purged because it was always there. And I think most people who are now aware, they see it more. That stuff was always there. They were always race swapping characters and gender swapping characters and changing characters' nationalities. But there was a time when they were doing that stuff and it was done artfully, or there seemed to be a purpose behind it. Like when Dr. Doom became a gypsy. It seemingly came out, or Romani, I'm sorry. It seemingly came out of nowhere. And all of a sudden he was brown. And you're like, wait a minute, Dr. Doom's always been white. Now he's a gypsy, he's brown. And then Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver became brown because they're all from the same area. And I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? But then they told this story in which, it's Eastern, Eastern, Middle Eastern, Europeans, Mediterraneans. And the story of, Dr. Doom's mom being a gypsy witch or something like that who lost her soul to Mephisto and all this. And I was like, okay, this might actually work. It might actually work. I don't think it stuck though. I think they backed off to that one real quick. Lady Shiva is very cool. Lady Shiva is a very cool character. I read about her a lot in The Question. I really liked her in The Question. Woke is forever. It's a feature, not a bug. Yeah, I mean, they're going to get the message out there. Trust me. They're going to put the message in there. It's about whether they're going to, put a little bit or put a lot, or they're going to beat you over the head with it. At this point, they decided not to beat you over the head with it anymore. Prince Ali says, I highly recommend A Clockwork Orange. Think of the Joker if he was a teenager and society tried controlling him. It's kind of like American Psycho in the same category. I watched A Clockwork Orange a lot as a kid. I haven't seen it in years, though. So I don't remember it that much. But I have seen A Clockwork Orange. I will be watching it again soon. Bo DeMaio is going to get the government to help him destroy Disney. Good luck. I think he just has a huge ego. I don't think he knows anything that's going to get Disney destroyed. I doubt this guy knows anything about Disney that can get Disney destroyed. Anything that could get Disney destroyed is probably already, public knowledge, and nobody's going to do anything about it. Believe it or not, people still love Disney. I mean, until the Disney World and all that kind of stuff started losing tons of money, you don't got to worry about Disney going out of business. WG Fields, could you pitch a WWE New 52 Ultimate Universe? If so, which 3 changes would you put in this universe? All right, so let's say we're going to create an alternate broken timeline of WWE. This is actually kind of fun because you could do this with a lot of different decisions that were made or decisions that were going to be made that end up not being made. And I was thinking about that earlier today as I was going on my walk to the grocery store. Like Butch Reed was supposed to be the first Black Intercontinental Champion, and it didn't happen. I'm not saying that's one of the things that I would have made happen, but I'm just saying that's interesting. You know, Tito Santana was up for to being the WWF champion in around '92, but they decided to give it to Bret Hart. Wouldn't it have been interesting if they decided to go with Tito Santana rather than Bret Hart? That would have been interesting. I think it was a little late for Tito, though. I think the big change I would have made that would have changed the trajectory of the entire company is Bret Hart stays. I think you have a completely different WWF if Bret Hart stays in '97. Everything is different. I think at that point, you know, because now you're looking at maybe even having a different WrestleMania main event. Maybe it's not Shawn and Austin. Maybe it's Bret and Austin. With Mike Tyson. Again, I think we talked about this before, where it could be the next level from Ken Shamrock. You know, you have Kurt Angle and Bret Hart being able to have matches. Um, you have a completely different WWF at that point, but you don't have Mr. McMahon. So that's the twist. You got Bret Hart, but you don't have Mr. McMahon, which means you probably don't have the biggest heel in wrestling throughout the entirety of the Attitude Era. How about that? Could you imagine the Attitude Era without Vince McMahon being an on-screen character? How does that turn out? AJ3 says most of these DC shows feature obscure characters. Why is that? I think because they're pumping out so much material, they don't want to overuse the same characters over and over again. So they decide to just basically switch things up a little bit. And I'm okay with that. Like the main characters, you need them. But do we really need an abundance of Joker material? I don't think we even needed Harley Quinn in Cape Crusader. We didn't even need Harley Quinn, you know? But it was interesting seeing how they defined who Harley Quinn is and what she is without the Joker. And they completely changed her into a completely different character. Back to the WWE separate universe question. So yeah, you got Bret stays, so you don't get Mr. McMahon. Maybe Owen doesn't even die because Bret's there. Um, Bulldog doesn't leave and injure his back in WCW because Bret stays, and therefore he doesn't leave. So you got Austin versus the Hart Foundation and Stone Cold Steve Austin. That could be fun. But does WWF win the war without Mr. McMahon? That's the big question. Or do you find another catalyst to turn Mr. McMahon into Mr. McMahon? Because a lot of the heat comes from Bret screwed Bret. That's where a lot of the heat came from. But maybe you still have Austin and McMahon while Bret is still there. Maybe. Another big thing you could probably change that would change the entire trajectory of the WWE specifically. It would be obvious to say no Owen Hart. Owen Hart doesn't die. You decide to change your mind. Owen doesn't need to go from the ceiling that night. So that means he wrestles. I think he was supposed to win the Intercontinental title. And he's continuing to be the Blue Blazer for another year or so, and then he just craps out and quits or something like that. Because I don't think he's going to be around much longer after that anyway. So that's an easy one. And I think that's the obvious one. If I had a magic wand, that would be the one thing that I would change, is that Owen never gets up in those rafters. The Chris Benoit thing isn't something you can control. I don't think you can control the Chris Benoit thing. Maybe maybe we make Vince change his mind on Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels, and he gives Randy Savage that last year that he wanted to feud with Shawn, and it would have been WrestleMania 11, I think. Would have been Randy Savage's last one, and it's Shawn and Savage rather than Shawn and Diesel. That could be fun. What does Diesel do that year then? He might end up with King Kong Bundy at that point, where he has to wrestle Undertaker. But I would imagine it would have been King Kong Bundy, or he never had to wrestle Bam Bam Bigelow probably. So that could have been, but I don't think that would have changed the business a lot, because Randy Savage going to WCW, that did a lot for WCW in terms of marketing value and all that stuff. And Vince doesn't lose the big sponsorship for Slim Jim. So maybe some of the financial decisions that he made later on, like cutting the women's division, maybe he doesn't do that because he still has the Slim Jim deal. And then maybe Randy Savage still wrestles off and on when Vince has kind of feels that he needs him to jump in there. And then you might have had Randy Savage there in '96 when Warrior came back. Then you could have maybe have had another Savage and Warrior match. Or you could have had Randy Savage there during the Attitude Era. As either a color commentator or occasional in-ring guy. That could be a completely different WWF at that point. WCW still was going to end up with the NWO probably. I think it was stronger with Savage in it, but I don't think Savage was necessary for the NWO to work. He just kind of fit the motif. What's the third one that I would come up with that would change a lot? I'm trying to think of a really good one. Maybe CM Punk doesn't leave after Royal Rumble 2014. I mean, let's say that the promo on Thanksgiving with him and Colt Cabana never happens because Punk stays with WWE. He wrestles that year at WrestleMania, and he just sticks around. He's there when Bryan Danielson is the world champion, so we get some Punk Danielson stuff in 2015. There's no huge energy around AEW for him to, but he still could have been there in AEW. He just wouldn't have been there. He just wouldn't have been gone for 7 years. So there's some stuff there. Ryback still is going to get the shaft, and maybe Roman doesn't walk around with a chip on his shoulder for almost a decade, but there's still some interesting things there if you were to do Punk continues after Royal Rumble 2014. There's some interesting things that could go on. And Tito Santana never got a chance to finish his feud with Rick Martel after Strikeforce broke up. Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't understand why they did that. And then they also changed Rick Martel later too. Like the early 90s, like 90, 91, things got real weird. Like all of a sudden, Rick Martel's a model and Tito Santana's a bullfighter. It's like, what the fuck? Why is this happening? The guy who was Smash in the Demolition is now a Repo Man. Like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Will Lex Luger win the title at Mania in your timeline? I think Lex Luger winning the title at WrestleMania 10 and then losing it to Brett later the same night would have been crazy. And I think the big issue Vince had was Luger was a babyface, and he insisted on Luger being a babyface. I think if Luger would have won the title from Yoko and then lost it to Bret, and then turned heel afterwards, that could have been fun. But in my alternate timeline, I don't see a need for Luger to win the title. Even though I wasn't a big fan of Yokozuna being the champion, I just don't see it like that would have changed the trajectory of the WWE forever. It has been a interesting twist for Luger to win the title at SummerSlam. If he'd have won it at Mania, I still would have had him lose it to Bret. So WG Phil said maybe Mr. McMahon could be a Mr. Hyde persona once he sees Triple H has a future in owning the company. Yeah, but how much longer is that after? You know, if Bret sticks around, does Triple H even become a top guy? Because DX is still there, but Bret doesn't really want to work with Hunter. I think he probably would have had more respect for him, but I don't think he'd really want to work with him. I don't think he dropped the belt to him or anything like that. So I don't know. Did you see Bret Hart's Wrestling with Shadows documentary? Was Bret always better in character and out of character? Uh, of course I watched Wrestling with Shadows. I think everybody's seen that. I think Bret's the same person, but the character is a little bit. It's just Bret Hart with one or two extra digits. I don't think it's Bret Hart turning the volume all the way up. I think Bret just goes from 6 to 8, while other people go from 6 to 40. Like but Hulk Hogan, he stays on 50 forever, brother. The 24 is Python, brother. This is where the power lies, brother. Reigns doesn't win the 2015 Royal Rumble. Okay, let's say Reigns doesn't win the 2015 Royal Rumble. Who do we give it to? Danielson? So now Danielson doesn't need to wrestle Triple H. And no. What am I talking about? That would have been 2014. I'm tripping because Batista won in 2014. Okay. So 2015 Rumble, who will win it? If it's not going to be Roman, who else could it have been? I'm trying to put myself in the state of mind of 2015, which is not good because my memories of those times are spotty at best. I don't like the way that he did it, but I don't really mind that Roman won. In your timeline, what loose end in WWE would you wrap up that they never did today? Kane and Undertaker. Um, I think one of the things that, and this was a kind of a razor fist idea, is he felt like Kane should have broke the streak and retired Undertaker. I agree with half of that. I definitely think Kane should have retired Undertaker. I don't know if he should have broke the streak though. So, but I do think that's one of the storylines that they should have, or Undertaker retired Kane, whichever one you wanted to do. I know Undertaker wrestled after Kane, so it seemed like that's the direction they were going in when Kane started like whooping his ass in like 2010. Or was it 2011? It was one of those years where Kane was a world champion. He's just beating Undertaker like a drum. It seemed like that might have been the direction they were going in, but that was just Undertaker giving Kane some kind of. It was all a waste anyway. Cause I think like the next year or a year after that, he was corporate Kane walking around in slacks. And I'm pretty sure Undertaker had his head in his hands. Like I just did like 400 jobs for this fucking guy, and now he's running around dressed like IRS. What a disaster. Maybe in the 3 count verse, Cena goes Hollywood, not heel, but leaving for Hollywood. I think that's kind of what naturally occurred anyway. So I don't see how that would be different. I think more people just kind of expect Cena to leave and go to Hollywood. But do we change the character? Like no more jorts? Is he out there in a suit now? That would have been weird. Because I don't know. That's weird. That's a weird thought to have changed John Cena to the point where he doesn't have a suit. He doesn't have the jorts and everything, but he's dressed like Cody Rhodes every week. I don't know. I also don't really have an idea of John Cena turning heel. I just don't think it would have worked. You know, for what? Who would have been the top heel, top babyface if he was the top, heel? The smaller guys, the Punks and the Danielsons, that'd have killed the goddamn company right there, brother. No, they ain't gonna turn John Cena heel. Forget that. Um, Another change you could have made that would have been interesting to see is maybe you have Vince stick with his first mind and have Ted DiBiase win the tournament at WrestleMania 4. That you get no mega powers at that point, and we need to have the mega powers, but you get no mega powers if Randy Savage doesn't win that tournament and doesn't win that title. And I think the mega powers is one of the greatest things ever done. So I won't do that. Um, so uh, it's always been something that I suggested, like that'd have been a good idea, but we need to have the mega powers, so you can't do that. Maybe you have Hogan wrestle Flair at WrestleMania 8, which is what everybody would have wanted. It still wouldn't have saved Ric Flair's run in WWF, I don't think, but it had just been one of the things he could have checked off. And it would have taken the steam out of it in WCW. They still probably would end up doing it there, but it wouldn't have been as big a deal as, the first time, even though it wasn't the first time ever. It was the first time ever on pay-per-view when Flair wrestled Hogan for the title. So, but I think the big one is Brett sticking around because that changes the entire Attitude Era. That changes literally everything. Um, if you put DiBiase over at WrestleMania 4, you get no mega powers. Means you get no Macho King, and you get no Savage versus Warrior, and you also get no reunion with Elizabeth at WrestleMania 7. So I can't do that one. Can't have that one. And it also probably changes the trajectory of Warrior's career too, if Hogan, if Ted DiBiase wins, because then likely DiBiase as the champion defends against Hogan and probably loses it a couple months later anyway. So nah, we need to have our mega powers, bro. We need that. WG Phil says so far the show I was watching, Get Ranger, adapted as Jungle Fury, is probably the best Sentai from the 2000s. The storytelling was pretty top notch. I tried watching that train show, man. I was like, I don't know. I probably got I got pretty far into it. No, the train one. I got pretty far into it. Did I finish the train one? I think I might have finished the one with the trains. It was another one, the one with the cars, the police cars and trucks and everything that you sent me. That's the one I didn't finish. But I finished the one with the trains, yeah. I didn't know that they had so many versions of that stuff, but the Japanese Super Sentai and the Kamen Rider stuff is pretty fun. I can't I can't watch a lot of it though. Like I tried watching like Kamen Rider shows and I always get kind of bored after a while. But I'm willing to watch at least one episode of it. You could put it in the Discord. I'll watch it. I'll watch one episode of it. I'll give it a shot. I got to catch up on My Hero Academia, the anime. I've been watching a string of Saturday Night's Main Event. After I watched all of the Clash of the Champions, I said I was going to watch all of Saturday Night's Main Events, and I started watching those, and I'm at 1987 now. I love Saturday Night's Main Event, man. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff. It's really good. Hogan and Orndorff from October of 86. 20,000 people in the building. The camera was shaking. Look, this is supposed to be our non-wrestling thing, but I want to talk about this for a second. People have no earthly idea how huge the Paul Orndorff heel turn was in 86. That thing was massive. That thing was massive. They did like a huge show in Toronto that was main evented by Hogan and Orndorff. It was massive, bro. It was a gigantic feud. It was crazy. And just watching that thing, it's such energy. It was mad. Oh my God. Going back and watching that stuff, the Piper babyface turn, Ricky Steamboat getting the DDT on the floor. You're like, oh my God, this is. I wasn't old enough to appreciate any of this stuff because in 1986 I was 2. But going back and reliving it is crazy. Do they even have all the Saturday Night's Main Events? I haven't gotten there yet because I know there was. I think they do. I haven't checked, but I think they do. They were quarterly, if I remember correctly. It was like once every 3 months or something like that. So they weren't like weekly. And they were expecting you to follow the regular television show, which I believe was Superstars or Primetime Wrestling or Wrestling Challenge. I'm pretty sure it was Wrestling Challenge. But in 1986, it might have been Wrestling Challenge. Also told myself I was going to start watching Velocity. And I just looked at the first 4 episodes of Velocity and I was like, I'm not even about to do this to myself. I'm not that much of a dedicated guy. I'm going to watch Sunday Night Heat and Velocity. I was thinking about, hey, you know what? Let's just do a run of Saturday Night Shotgun. Because I liked the idea originally. When I was a kid and Saturday Night Shotgun first came on and they were wrestling in like weird tunnels and shit, I was like, this is fucking cool. But now I'm kind of like, I know what it turns into. And I'm like, I don't know. But there's a lot of podcasters and stuff that really love deep diving into Velocity and Sunday Night Heat. I'm like, bro, I'm not going into the C shows. I'll do some of the B shows, bro. Like I'll go into Superstars and Raw and Primetime Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge. I even do a little bit of Action Zone because that's more of my speed, even though Action Zone wasn't around for that long. But I also was kind of pissy that they don't have the Brawl for Alls. I know that, not the Brawl for Alls, the free for alls, the pre-shows for the pay-per-view. They don't have those things, and I didn't even notice that until somebody mentioned it to me. That none of the free for alls are on the network. They weren't on the original network either. So all the pre-show matches and stuff for the pay-per-views, they weren't on there. I was like, huh, that's interesting. It should have been, because Steve Austin versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley was huge. And Steve Austin going forward because he's filling in for Savio Vega or something like that. And he kind of worked babyface in that match. I remember that it was from it was a show that Steve Austin was not booked for. Was it Mind Games? It was one of those 96 shows. Hunter was still in the doghouse getting jobbed out a lot. And he was supposed to wrestle Savio Vega on the pre-show. The Savio was injured, and they filled him in with Steve Austin, and then Steve Austin had to work babyface in that match, even though he was still a heel. But he was getting good fan reactions. I believe it was maybe a month or two before Survivor Series, which means it was probably mind games. So that was pivotal. That was important. He also beat Yokozuna on a pre-show match too for SummerSlam '96. That was embarrassing for Yokozuna. He was so fat he couldn't get on the second row. How embarrassing was that? That was the shit. But WWE not even utilizing all their own material was it's very frustrating. It's one thing for them to not put up, and people are always complaining they don't put up championship wrestling from Florida. Even after Kevin Sullivan passed away, they still didn't put that stuff up. They didn't even put up all the AWA. They only put up the stuff with the Midnight Rockers on it. Like, what are you doing? What do you have all this shit for? They didn't put up all the Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They only got up what Thrill Seekers were involved with. Like, why not? What's going on? I know they said some of that stuff is hard to digitize, and they figure people don't watch it. They just use it for B-roll and documentaries. I say they need to go ahead, quickly put that stuff up before it complete. Like, those tapes are not going to last forever. Those tapes are going to be worthless. Who knows how many years? They got a gigantic mountain in the Catskills full of wrestling tapes, and they just got the shit in there, bro. It's like it just got tons of shit, and they just bought some shit the last few years ago, all the Puerto Rico stuff, and I heard some of that stuff is virtually unusable because it's been damaged. But I don't think they even got all the WWF stuff up because they don't have. There's some things from the very early days they don't have. They clearly don't have anything from Capitol. I don't think they have anything from Capitol up because they have nothing that old up. Nothing from the 50s or 60s even on the network. So I think pretty much everything starts in the 70s, early 70s. And I think that it starts with early 70s WWF or WWF. Yeah. So they don't even have their entire discography up. So, but there's still like shows that I'm like, why don't they have Collision in Korea? Why is that not on the network? You know, WWF did a show with SWS. Why is that not on the network? Do they even have Tough Enough on the network? I don't think they even have Tough Enough on there. Let me check right now while I'm sitting here talking about it. I don't even think they have Tough Enough. So they don't even they're pretty ridiculous. Oh wait, there's 5 Saturday Night's main events in 1987. So it's more than quarterly. But it's not too far off. One in January, one in March, one in May, one in October, and one in November. Interesting. I wonder why they don't do Saturday Night's main event anymore. Is it because they won't give them the TV time? I'm pretty sure NBC would be thrilled to have like a 90-minute wrestling show for NBC. Let's see, Tough Enough. Okay, you do got Tough Enough on here. All right. Damn, there was 5 seasons of Tough Enough. But I'm also shocked that they didn't put up any of the the FCW stuff or the OVW stuff. They didn't put up any of that stuff. You think that they want people to see that because they air NXT now, but they air NXT and FCW and Deep South. Put that stuff on the network. Why not? What would be the reason why you wouldn't put that stuff on the network? You don't want people to see it? Since when? You air NXT where people are falling all over each other. Maybe somebody needs to ask Triple H, like, brother, I don't know if you're in control of the network or to what degree you're in control of the network, but can you please put up old OVW and old FCW and Deep South Wrestling? Can you please? We would like to see that stuff instead of trying to chase it down on YouTube. I know that that Dombrowski guy, he owns all the footage for Heartland. How the hell he got it, I have no idea. That's crazy that he managed to get it though. WG Phil says the Red Ranger is returning to the car season. Maybe I could recommend the episode of Special if it comes out. Oh, interesting. Okie dokie. I guess I'll go and start catching up on My Hero Academia, the anime. Thanks everybody for stopping by, man. I appreciate it. You guys enjoy yourself, and I'll talk to you guys next week.